This is the Caspian Sea Monster, a Soviet Ecranoplan made in the 60s. Last year I tried to make one, but it didn't really fly. However, a few days ago I saw a few different videos about RC Ecranoplans, and so I thought it would be interesting to try it again. This time making it lighter and land capable, so that means adding wheels. For this new Ecranoplan I decided to reuse the tail, since it was still intact and it took quite long enough to build the first one. So yeah, and for the fuselage I decided to go with some 2 cm thick foam. I decided to try and make another balloon class Ecranoplan because it looks really nice and I heard it has better flying characteristics than other designs. This would be especially important for me because unlike RC test flight, I don't have any kind of stabilization. For the fuselage, I cut out 2 Ecranoplan shapes and I glued them together. However, I probably should have reinforced it beforehand because it was really flexible. However, in the end, I decided to take a wooden spar and glue it into the fuselage. However, you will see that later on. Now, here I found a small wheel laying around in my house, so I decided to just use it for this Ecranoplan as the nose wheel. And yeah, I decided to glue a small wooden spar on the bottom of the plane in order to glue the wheel on there, and I also reinforced it with another small piece of wood. And yeah, it held up quite well, but it didn't really fit in there, so I had to cut some of the fuselage off. And this actually proved to be a very good choice for me, because later on I decided to make the wheel a little bit bigger, and this part of the fuselage actually made this possible. So yeah, next up I took a thin carbon rod and cut it in half so that I could use it for the main landing gear. But why didn't I just use a normal RC plane landing gear from Amazon, for example? Well, this rod would absorb a lot of the force and make the landing smoother. A normal landing gear would probably have made the plane snap in half, so that was even more important, because my plane would be traveling really close to the ground at rather high speeds. Yeah, but now that all of that was done, the final part of this aircraft build was to glue the tail on there. And yeah, it looked pretty nicely, just like the real one. And it was also quite light. I think it weighed around 100 to 200 grams. So yeah, it's pretty light. And in order to test the aircraft handling characteristics beforehand, I decided to just throw it a few times on the ground, and yeah, here it is. Right, so it's not the best flying aircraft, but that's not too important. I then decided to add a big RC motor to the front that is technically able to run off 6S batteries, but in order to make it quieter and more efficient, I decided to only use 3S batteries for this project. I also decided to put the motor on a small kind of stand that I built out of a few pieces of foam that I also had just lying around, and I also reinforced it with some pieces of wood. However, I was kind of afraid that the motor would vibrate too much and kind of fall off, so I decided to reinforce it a little bit more with another small wooden spar in the back. After that, I tried to make some sort of airfoil. However, I probably should have just kept it like this, because I don't want any lift when I'm not in the ground effect, but oh well. Next up, I decided to add a small 40 ampere ESC. It is capable of 2 to 4S. However, it might have been a little bit overkill since I'm only using 3S, but it's better to be safe than sorry, because once my ESC got destroyed because I used too much throttle, but that probably won't be the case with this project. So yeah, now all that was left was to connect all the cables to the receiver in the aircraft. And yeah, I kind of just made a flying wing with the controls, because the tail part was acting like the elevons for the elevator and the aileron. So I didn't have to install any servos in the wing, which was quite a good thing. However, now that I think of it, it might have been a little too little, because I barely could control it. But yeah, maybe I'll change that in a future video. As you can see, the aircraft really wanted to go to the left, so I decided to correct it by moving the motor a little bit more to the right. I did this by gluing the aircraft motor in a different direction, but I probably should have made the rudder a little bigger, but yeah, it worked anyways, as you can see here. So in the end, I only managed to get 1 or 2 good flights where it was in ground effect, but I think I can improve a lot. Maybe I should add a new nose wheel, or maybe even make it amphibious. Write your thoughts in the comments down below, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.